Hello, RoKStars. How's everyone going? Well, actually, rather than RoKStars, I should say upcoming RoKStars or new RoKStars, because you are watching a video which is about early game, and we are going to talk about the best 10 early game commanders today. Well, I'm actually going to talk about 10 best early game commanders for free-to-play and low spenders, and at the same time, slightly different 10 best early game commanders for people who spends a little bit in the game as well. And then there's going to be a slight variation for KvK 2 and 3, because as you know, during KvK 3 you do get a few new commanders, so we're going to have a little bit of an update for that as well. So overall, basically out of the video, what we're looking at providing to you today is a guidance or an understanding, some recommendation in terms of smart commander investments in early game, because we want to invest in commanders that's not that you're not just gonna play for a couple months, because gold heads are hard to come by. So you want to invest in commanders that will last you at least you know, a year. I don't know, YSG lasted me 3 years, so there you go. That's going to be one of the commanders, obviously, because we have him up on the screen as well. But then how do you want to go about this video? Should I give you the top 10 commanders by ranking? Maybe that's what we should do. Maybe do the ranking. So the best commander in early game, this is the most obvious comment that you will find everywhere. YSG is the best early game commander who most people still use to the day. So we recently did a video about the top players in Rise of Kingdoms, and 9 out of 10 of those players are still using YSG. So yeah, there you go, you have to invest in him. And YSG you can start using from 5511, and then obviously maxed is better, so you slowly maxed based on your spending. Now the second best commander in purely early game, second best commander, I should specify, YSG could technically be the best commander in the game, but anyways, so the second best early game commander in my eyes is actually going to be Alexander the Great. So again, you can use 5511, but obviously maxed is better. Now the reason why YSG was good was his massive damage. He does a lot of damage, one of the rare commanders who can hit 5 targets and then in a circular AoE. There are a few other commanders that does it, but it's quite rare and it's very powerful. YSG actually has a rage boost. YSG has all sort of skill boosts everywhere, so it is a high damaging commander. Now what Alex does is, Alex infantry commander, infantry is naturally a little bit slow, but he does give a little bit of a march speed, he does give some shields, but the most important, he does a little bit of a damage as well. But then the most important thing that he does is he makes the target that you're hitting, or actually 3 enemy targets, take more damage around within a circular area. 30% increased damage taken for 4 seconds. That's massive. So that's why you actually want to have this commander in your lineup. Now Alex you don't get for first KvK. I believe you start getting him for the second KvK, if I'm not wrong. Definitely by the third, but probably by the second. But either way, in terms of KvK 1, 2 and 3, well, 2 and 3 I guess I should say, Alex is a must have. Now the third commander, we went with 1 archer, which was YSG, 1 infantry, which was Alex, so we obviously have to go with 1 Cav, and this is probably not a surprise to anyone either. It's gonna be Saladin. Now unlike the previous 2 commanders, we do not recommend 5511. We actually recommend 5551 with Saladin. Now what Saladin does, now this is a skill that's extremely important early game and completely useless later on, but then we are talking about early game, so you know this is quite valid. And that skill in question is, if I can find it, this one. So when he is hitting a target, the healing effects received by the target is lowered by 50% for the next 5 seconds. And you know why this is important? Because a lot of people use Richard early game. He's the guy that can kind of take down Richard, so that's why to melt the Richards you kind of have to have him. With Richard without healing is like nothing. It's like, you know, Ladus without YouTube, I guess, or gaming I should say. Anyways, his damage isn't that high, but for early game it's pretty good. He does have a skill where he boosts the defense of Cavs as well, and then he takes less counter attack damage. He slows down enemy marches as well. So in many different ways, a 5551 Saladin is a very good to have, actually should be must have. So these are the top 3 commanders. Now after we have talked about the top 3, which was actually rather easy, Now, the fourth commander, some people will say it's easy. I'm not too sure. It took me a little while to come to the conclusion, but then the fourth commander in my eyes would be Ethelfled. Now, Ethelfled is someone that you don't need to worry about. You don't need to know much about the skills either. She does a fan-shaped area, I guess. She does a lot of damage. She boosts that damage when she's maxed, and then she slows down the enemy. You can take mixed troop. All of these things really good. Reduces the defense or health and attack of the target. So there's nothing bad about any of her skills. But the main reason why I said you don't need to worry much about her is because you don't have to invest gold heads, as you probably know already from the game expedition and all that. You naturally get Ethelfled heads, and that helps you max her out. So that's our fourth early game commander. You're probably not gonna have her maxed by KvK 1, maybe by KvK 2, actually maybe by KvK 1, not too sure. But either way, as long as you have her beyond 5-5, you can kind of start using her already. So that's number 4. Now let's talk about commander number 5. Now commander number 5, probably not a surprise either, but then I'm pretty sure some people would have someone else here in number 5, or maybe within the top 5 people would have Richard. I do have Richard, but not in top 5. Charles is going to be my top 5 because, as I was saying, when you're investing in commanders, the first 3 commanders that I talked about, actually the first 4 commanders that I talked about, you can still kind of use them in late game as well. They're not necessarily the best for late game, but you can, and Charles kind of falls under the same category. Richard doesn't. Richard has no use late game, so do not invest too much in Richard. But this is not about Richard. Now we are talking about Charles. Focus, Ladus. So in terms of Charles, if you have a Charles 5-5-1-1 already usable, Charles comes from gold keys, so you don't even have to invest gold heads in him. Probably if you're lucky, you can get him to, I guess, 5-1-1 without even investing anything. Now the second skill, you may get to 5-2, 5-3, whatever from gold keys, and the extra little bit of gold heads, probably not a bad idea just to get him to 5-5. At 5-5, you skill lock, and then you get him to 60, and then you can use him as a primary. What he does is he gives a shield which makes sure he doesn't take too much damage. He increases skill damage of the second commander as well. So in a way, he does the tankiness, and he helps dish out damage as well through the second commander. So definitely a good pickup. Now that was our number 5. Now, in terms of number 6, does Richard make the cut? Not yet. There's one more commander that kind of comes in between, and that is definitely going to be a surprise for a few of you guys. And so I guess I need to explain myself. So the 6th commander in my eyes is actually Mehmet. Now, before I guess I talk about how great is Mehmet, I just want to point out there's a lot of top players in late game who still use Mehmet. Not always. But then when the top players with top power, every commander access in the game, and massive kill points and all that, the reason why they selectively use Mehmet often is when they have a superiority in the field, basically a KvK they can win, or in the murder ball they have more numbers, they usually take Mehmet in their 7 March lineup. The reason why they take Mehmet is because Mehmet does a lot of damage. Now, if a commander is good enough in terms of doing damage in late game, then why wouldn't you use him in early game? Just look at the skill. He can hit 5 targets. How many commanders do you have in early game that can hit 5 targets? And he does a lot of damage to the 5 target. And in the second skill, he does a skill damage boost of 20%. So, and then he has skills where he can take more troops. As a leadership commander, he can take a lot of troops, 10% more. So everything that Mehmet actually offers is good for open field as well, other than that one skill which is for city hitting, which is why people kind of doesn't like him maybe as much. But then he's, in my eyes, he's like a must-have in early game. So with Mehmet, you want to make him 5-5, and then with a skill lock, obviously get him to 5-5, and then you can max the experience, get him to level 60. But then after 5-5, you probably shouldn't be using gold heads. You probably should be waiting for the gold keys to naturally max him. Eventually you're gonna get there, don't worry about it. But then 5-5, you can kind of start using him. I just want to check, out of curiosity, I just want to see how many kills do I have from Mehmet. That's quite a lot. Like, that's quite a lot. But anyways, I mean, I'm not the guy with the biggest kills. For me, that's a lot. But anyways, So that was our number 6. Now, when it comes to number 7, I made you guys wait a long time. So yes, Richard kind of makes the cut, but I have to say this. Richard after KvK 2, like not even KvK 3, after KvK 2, he is definitely not a good choice. I mean, obviously you can use him. He's tanky, he's not gonna die, but the problem is he doesn't do a lot of damage. So what that means is you're just getting hospital bills. Maybe if you put like a Sansu or a Ethelfled or a YSG behind him, then he's kind of doing some damage, like hidden damage, and he doesn't get targeted. So there is a way to use him even after KvK 2 and 3, but then 1 and 2, I mean, but then he's not just good, he's just not great. Let's put it this way, he's great in KvK 1 and 2, after that not that great. So the reason why we kind of elaborated that, but then still included Richard, is because that tankiness is quite important for KvK 1 and 2, and for that you can use him at 5511. So after 5511 you do not have to invest any more in Richard. Richard is not in gold gear, so it's not like you're naturally gonna get his heads. So if you have your Richard at 55, then leave it at that. With 5-5, you survive KvK 1, 2, maybe 3, and after that, you forget about him. So that's our top 7. Now, at top 7, I'm going to take a little pause in terms of the legendary commanders, and I'm going to mention 3 epics. Now, do I think these 3 epics are better than legendaries? Probably not. But then, the reason why I'm taking a pause is these commanders, the 7 that I talked about, kind of works for free-to-play, big spenders and everything in a way. But then the next 3 epics, I'm kind of putting them in for the free-to-play or very low spenders, so that I can kind of cover off the 10 marches for you guys, and then we'll move on to the spender section. So after the 7, after the 7 legendaries, the 3 epics that I want to talk about, the first one is Sansu. Now, most people say Sansu is almost a legendary. I mean, Sansu in real life was definitely a legend, and even in the game, even though he's epic, he's kind of legendary. He does that 5 target thing, the thing that we keep talking about, 5 target, fan-shaped area. And then he does have a skill damage boost over here as well, which is something that we value. And then he has other skills that kind of helps him be tanky, infantry health. Yep. So overall, he's a great commander. So you can definitely use him in KvK 1, 2, maybe even 3. Actually, maybe even 3. He's actually more useful than Richard. But either way, you got Sansu there. Now, the second commander, just like the legendaries, we picked 1 infantry, and now we're gonna pick 1 archer. Now this archer in question is actually Kira for me. Now Kira, even though she has a barbing skill, she does do a decent damage up to 3 targets AoE, and then she does have some damage boosts along the lines here, and then archer defense, archer attack. So she has quite a bit in her skill, even though one of our skills is barb only, and one of her skills has a big focus on scenario battle. So increased skill damage taken, like in scenario battles, she does a lot. But even without scenario battles, by scenario battles they mean events in game, special events, not PvP. But even when you're in PvP, she does have decent skill damage. So overall, she's definitely a good archer. Now the thing with her is you're not gonna have her maxed by KvK 1, probably not even by KvK 2, because you have to play the event where you can buy Cerulean Crisis, where you can buy her heads. So you can't use the normal universal heads on her. Either way, you will get there. Even from I want to say even as a 5-0 something. So what I would say to do with her is you max the first skill, you unlock up until 4th, and then you just pray that the skills drop on the 4th. That's how I would go about it. You'll naturally get some on the 3rd, on the 2nd, but either way, as long as its first skill is max, you can kind of start using her. With the first skill max, I think she's kind of usable if you're talking about early KvK epic archer commanders, because the other choices are actually not that great. All right, and now that we talked about infantry, archer, now we want to talk about cavalry. Now early on when I was playing, I actually used to like Pelagius a lot. I never liked Babers. Babers is absolutely useless unless you're killing farms. Pelagius had some value, but then the commander that I kind of like the most now that I think about it, and I did use him quite a bit, when I went back to play KvK 2 and 3. Maybe didn't use him in 3, but in KvK 2. But anyways, it's actually the commander that I can't find. Now I can find him. It's Babers. Now the reason why we like Babers, 5 targets. So guys, anything that hits 5 targets, always a good thing. Yeah, 5 targets, 1000 damage factor, very good. Decreases their march speed. And then Cav has more attack, and then there's a little bit of healing somewhere as well. Yep. When you disengage in battle, you get a little bit of healing. So everything that he has is pretty useful. And in early KvK, you are probably looking for more damage than anything, and he kind of offers that. So Babers is the choice. Now, if you are a low spender free to play and you're going with the choices that we talked about, how would you pair them up? So my pairing in this situation, the first one, let's start with infantry. So the first one will be Charles, and remember how we say Charles is tanky, that's why he's primary, he's not gonna get targeted often. And as a secondary to Charles, we are going to put Sun Tzu. The reason why we are putting Sun Tzu is because Sun Tzu has 5 target damage, a lot of damage, and remember how we talked about Charles actually boosts the damage of the second commander, so that way they kind of pair well, good synergy over there. Now the next one that pair that we're gonna do, and this is gonna be infantry again. Now this is going to be with Richard and Alex. Now the reason why we're going with Richard primary, again, because he's tanky, so he's not targeted often, and Alex from behind can keep doing that debuff that he does with his first skill, as in making the targets take more damage. And then his second skill is there as well, which does a pretty decent damage, 1700 damage factor. So you have Richard and Alex as your second pair, so you got 2 tanky infantry pairs that are not gonna get targeted often. Now in terms of both of those tanky primary commanders, you got offensive commanders in the second, so they are not going to be completely useless in field. You are going to pick up counter attack damage, and you're going to do some damage as well. Now for the third march, we are going to go with archers. Now we only talked about 2 archer commanders, so obviously these are the commanders we're going to pair up with. So it's going to be Kira and YSG. Now Kira and YSG, it kind of doesn't probably matter which one you take as a primary, but usually I would probably go with Kira as long as Kira's first skill is maxed. I'm gonna go with Kira and YSG. Now for whatever reason, if you do not get your Kira maxed, then you can use one of the other ones. Harman is probably the next best option. I don't know whether I can find Harman now, but either way, Harman is an option if you don't get your Kira decently maxed up in before your KvK 1 starts. By KvK 2 you probably should have. Now let's move on to our cavalry march, because we did 1 archer and now it's cavalry time. Again, we just talked about 2 cavalry commanders. One of them is Saladin and the other one is Babers. Now in this case, we are going to make sure that Saladin is primary, because Saladin comes with a support tree. Support tree is always good because our support tree generates rage more, and Saladin is tanky and in general as well, so less likely to be targeted. Epics does get targeted a little bit more. Now why didn't we do the same thing with YSG? Because YSG is probably going to get targeted even more than Epics, because everyone knows how much damage YSG does. That's why I usually recommend going with Kira first. Now, if you did not have, just going off track here, so if you did not have Kira and you wanted to use YSG primary, in that case, I mentioned Harman. Actually, maybe Harman primary, YSG secondary, but then if you didn't want to use Harman, if you wanted to use a generic commander, because I just saw his face, Osman is actually pretty decent, so you can use YSG and Osman. Osman does skill damage increase as well, and as you can see, I got pretty decent kills on Osman as well, so I did use him quite a lot. He can take more troops as well, that helps. Now going back to the Cav March, Saladin and Babers, Saladin primary, Babers secondary, both of them does a lot of damage, and well, does decent amount of damage, and then Saladin generates rage fast, a bit tanky as well, not targeted often. So that's done. And then lastly, we're going to recommend, the 2 commanders that's left. You got Ethelflaed and Mehmet, the 2 commanders that we talked about. Ethelflaed is going to be primary, and then Mehmet is going to be secondary, because maybe the Mehmet you don't even want to take to 60, because unless you're city rallying, you don't need your Mehmet to 60. Maybe you're just gonna go with Ethelflaed 60, because Ethelflaed has other uses as well, and maybe you just use the Mehmet as a secondary over there with mixed troops. So Ethelflaed, you should be getting maxed naturally sometime, and then Mehmet, we're saying 5511, and then if you naturally get him from gold heads, then he will go up as well. So that would be the recommendation for free to play and lower spenders. Obviously, if you're not lucky with gold heads and if you struggle with the commanders, buy KvK1, you replace them with epics. But the highlight that I'm trying to say is, do not put gold heads in other commanders. If you're free to play low spenders, rather than going with Mehmet or epics or anything that I recommended, if you end up going with other choices that you have in game, say for example investing gold heads in KvK, definitely not a free to play thing, and that's a waste of gold heads. You definitely shouldn't do. You may feel like, oh my god, Khan has so much damage, I want to go into Khan. Bad call, don't. Khan is a spender commander. So all these other commanders available in early game that you may feel tempted because they are maybe they're like historical figures. For example, you know, Ragnar. You watch the TV series and you want to use Ragnar. No, he's horrible. Don't. Just don't. So anyways, so that was the free-to-play low spender version. Now, if we are talking about spenders, this is where the scenario changes a little bit. So the first 3 commanders that you're gonna drop out of the 10 that we talked about, you guessed it right, the epics. So we're gonna drop all 3 epics. After we drop all 3 epics, which is probably not a you know, unpopular choice, I'm gonna drop Richard as well. I know, I can see the dislike, I can see the boost, but then for spenders in early KvK, I mean big spenders, I don't mean low spenders, but for big spenders in early KvK, Richard just doesn't make the cut. Like in early KvK, you're a spender, you're looking at picking up kills. You're not looking at being tanky. So if you want to pick up kills, how is Richard going to give you kills? So go for tanky options that does a lot more damage. So dropping the 3 epics, Babers, Kira, and Sansu, and dropping Richard as well. So if I am dropping 4 commanders, I needed to add in 4 commanders as well, right? So who are those 4 commanders gonna be? Now this is spender version, remember? So the commanders I'm gonna talk about definitely doesn't apply to free to play. And the reason why I say that is because these commanders you're not going to use afterwards. A spender can afford investing in commanders and not using them later. That's why I'm kind of including them in the spender version. So one of them is going to be Khan. Now just look at that. Oh my god, so many kills. So this is how much kills this guy can give you, as much as he's not going to have no use after KvK 3. But as a spender, you do want to spend in him, invest in him, I mean, and then pick up those kills. So you will go with, as a spender, you will go with Khan. So Khan was the replacement for Babers, if you like. Now for the Kira, the replacement, the legendary version is going to be someone that I didn't have access to when I was playing my early game, but he's there now, Tutmosis. So Tutmosis is absolutely useless in future KvKs, but when you talk about early KvK, if you look at the skills, not just the damage factor, the healing reduction, there's quite a lot of things here, damage bonus, quite a lot of things here that are very useful in early game, and they're quite decent skill. It's just that the factors are quite low for him to be useful in late game. But if you're a big spender, by the way guys, did I say spender? I meant big spender. So whatever I'm talking about now is for big spenders. So as a big spender who wants to rack up a lot of kills in early KvK, you can go with Tutmose, and you can use Tutmose and YSG. That's going to be a pretty decent pair. And then Saladin and Khan or Saladin, whichever way you want to go. Maybe go with Saladin and Khan, and Tutmose is with YSG. So those were the 2. Now the third one, where we dropped Sansu, we got Richard and Sansu. These are the 2 we dropped, right? Are we gonna put in another infantry? No, we're going to put in another cavalry march there. So if you're a spender, rather than 1 cav, you should probably play with 2 cav. So the second cavalry pair, again, this is where it's again should be quite obvious to you guys. So you are going to go with Minamoto. So for a spender, Minamoto is pretty cheap, probably the cheapest legendary commander that you can max in early game. So you buy out Minamoto from the VIP shop, and then you max KvK. Yes, you max double C. So you put in gold heads in double C as a big spender, because Minamoto and double C, you run around, you can get a lot of kills, you can chase down enemies and rack up your kills. So the spender version, I'm talking about getting massive kills. the free-to-play or low-spender version, I'm talking about surviving KvKs and still picking up kills, not necessarily going for massive kills. Because if you aim for massive kills, if you as a low-spender free-to-play, then you'll run out of resources, especially in early game where you're not kind of too sure about, you know, the fighting techniques and all of that. But anyways, so that would be, I guess, the KvK 1 and 2 version in terms of our recommendation. Now, I actually want to check my kills on Mina. Mina should have a lot of kills as well. I just want to see. All right, yeah, Minamoto has a decent amount as well. But anyways, actually, what we want to do now is we kind of covered probably up to KvK 2 in a decent way. Now for KvK 3, there's a little bit of a difference that comes in, and that difference is in the form of Eddie and Tommy. Now, for the low spenders and free to play, again, KvK 1 to 3, whatever we talked about initially, the 10 commanders, that doesn't change. So just because Eddie and Tommy is available, you don't think about Eddie and Tommy for KvK 3 because that's not going to be the best use of your gold heads. You save the gold heads because you do need to use them in a Season of Conquest commanders. So in terms of the spenders, again, you got Edward. He's just for 1 KvK, but if you're that big a spender, then you probably should, because you need him for archer rallies, and he's pretty good in the field for KvK 3 as well, but definitely not after. But then the second commander here, Tomiris, is definitely OP, and as a big spender early KvK, you're probably going to remain a big spender in late KvK as well, and that's where Tomiris, I still use Tomiris. I don't think I'm ever going to stop using her, so you definitely keep using her. So Tomiris herself is not going to pick up a lot of calls, but she's going to enable your other commanders to pick up a lot of kills. But anyways, for the third KvK, you as a spender, you definitely need to pick them up. Now if you pick them up, you need to drop your archer march that we were talking about, Tutmosis and YSG. So I guess I'm talking about mega spenders, because you used some gold heads in Tutmosis and now you're moving into Eddie. So if you drop out Tutmosis, then include Eddie and Tommy there, you still have to make a space for your YSG, because you shouldn't really not play with YSG. So you know what I'm going to do in that case? So let me give you the marches that we will recommend, because now the commanders got a little bit messy. So for KvK 3, for bigger spenders, or the biggest spenders I should say, this is how we will go. You'll go with Alex Charles. So you dropped the Sansu and the Richard, so you're gonna go with Alex plus Charles. And then actually if you're doing rallies, then you probably go Charles plus Alex, but then if you're open field, you go with Alex plus Charles. And then you still keep Ethelflaed and Mehmed, you go with Saladin and Minamoto, and then Khan with YSG and Eddie with Tommy. So that will be the KvK 3 version, which is a little bit different to the KvK 2 version. So clarifying the KvK 2 version again, so KvK 2 version for spenders was Saladin plus Minamoto, Khan plus Double C, Tutmosis plus YSG, Ethelflaed plus Mehmed, Charles plus Alex. So this is how I would probably do the pairing. Now, again, the big spender version. So in terms of rally and garrison, so you kind of need to talk about rally and garrison. So Eddie and Tommy will be the rally when they're available. Khan and Saladin is a good rally. Saladin Khan is kind of decent as well for rallies, but for rallies I'll probably go Khan Saladin rather than Saladin Khan. But open field I'll probably go Saladin and Khan. Anyways, Charles and Alex is the best infantry rally as well. In terms of garrison, KvK 2 onwards, you should, or KvK 3, you should probably look at Wu and Constantine as well. But then earlier versions, I mean, you know, Richard Charles and things like that, even the Richard YSG, Charles YSG is probably the best option. So there's quite a few combinations that you can kind of do. Now, we mentioned a commander that we probably need to explain a little bit. So between KvK 2 and 3, you're going to have access to Constantine. Now, I maxed Constantine because I played KvK 2 like 3 times. But then if you're not playing KvK 2 more than once or KvK 3 more than once, you probably shouldn't invest in Constantine. Constantine is only good for Sunset Canyon and kind of nothing else. So in the field, yes, you can take him out, and yes, he will make your marches a little bit more tanky. But then again, as a spender, only spenders can probably max him. And as a spender, are you looking for tanky or are you looking for kills? You can probably afford the hospital build, so looking for the tankiness is not your thing. Now, one other commander that people may ask, because we are talking about the spender version, is Barca. Is Barca worth using? Absolutely not. Like, never. There's like no scenario where Barca is going to be useless for you. What about Lubu? I don't even know whether you can get access to Lubu anymore. I thought he was like a special event thing, but if you can, no, he's useless. Don't. And this guy over here is useless as well, so just don't. Actually, when I say useless, they're not necessarily bad, but then they have no future value, and there's other commanders that has future value, so why go with someone that doesn't have future value? Now Wu, again, similar category. After KvK 2, she does, I mean KvK 3, she doesn't really have any use. As soon as Attila, Takeda, or the other, cap commanders XY, Nevsky, and all of them come in, she got no use. So definitely, if you're a big whale and you need to protect your KD, defend your KD, you invest in her, but otherwise no point. Elcid, oh my god, worst commander in the game. Definitely don't even look at Elcid. Now, one other thing I should mention, I don't know, as in like how much research you have done in Rise of Kingdoms, but then when there are commanders that are designated for farming, then they are purely for farming, so don't use them for other things. Now there's one decent commander over here, Freddy. So this is again the big spender version. So Freddy, you can kind of use him. He's not bad, he's not great, he's kind of good for KvK 1 maybe, and not after that. So like we can't really recommend investing in him even for big spenders. Now the most valid question, if you have been asking yourself already, well, not Julius Caesar, no, he's not that great. Mulan. So if this question came to your mind, then well, we are going to try to answer that. So the thing with Mulan is Mulan's extremely useful in late KvK with 7 marches. So unless you're using 7 marches, which you can't do in early KvK, I don't think she adds a lot of value. So if you naturally have a max Mulan, I don't know how you would, but if you naturally have a max Mulan, yeah, use her. But then Mulan is not a commander where I'm going to recommend even the biggest spenders to invest gold heads in early game, because again, as big a spender as you can be, when you go to Season of Conquest, you will need the gold heads because you would like to have all the Season of Conquest commanders back straight away as well, right? So even for the biggest spenders, maybe not, invest in Mulan, but somehow if you have access to million of gold keys and you kind of get her max, then yeah, she's good. Even then, maybe not for 5 marches. So what she does is she increases your rage, which is great, and the other thing she does is she boosts your march speed. So it's not bad, but maybe not for the 5 march situation. So anyways, guys, this is one of the longest videos that I have ever done. So if you appreciated our recommendations, if you like the guidance that we are providing and the effort that we are putting in, please drop a like and subscribe. We cover early game, late game, middle game, whatever game you wanna talk about in Rise of Kingdoms. So be subscribed, drop a like, and then check out the channel for other useful tips for early game KvKs and Rise of Kingdoms guides in general. One of the videos I can recommend would be the one where we talk about how to best fight in KvKs. What are the techniques, tips, and things you should know as a new player to RoK that helps you get more kills and be loved by your kingdom in Rise of Kingdoms. So anyways, let's call it a day here, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.